Hello. Hi. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Sandra.
Today I have the great pleasure of having a guest in our house and sharing a cup of cacao with Rachel Brownbridge.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to meet you. Of course, we've had a chance to talk a bit before we did the recording. But yes, Rachel has graciously volunteered to be part of the Cacao-talk ID that I've got. And for me, that's quite exciting because, in a way, you're one of the first people besides like my closest family who I do this with.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal is, or my wish, is to make a contact with people that I know, or to varying degrees that I know, and get to know you a bit more, and also what you're into doing, like your passion. And maybe some of those people who might be watching this video, they know you from before, but for those who maybe see you for the first time, or maybe have the chance to see a different angle of Rachel, how would you describe yourself, Rachel, or who are you?
That's quite a big question, but yeah, a good way to start, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I'm someone that is quite trusting in their decisions, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm living in a different country and
Yeah.
making friends with people like you, Sandra, and your family, and ending up in this talk because of kind of following my intuition, or following these pathways that I end up on, and maybe not necessarily doing what is deemed as like normal, or the way that many others go, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Because you have a bit of a story behind you of moving from England, right? That's where you were born and grew up.
so I'm from England in the south, and I
Yeah.
grew up there, and I traveled a lot, or worked and traveled from like the age of 18. A lot of the time it was in ski resorts in France, but also traveled a bit and managed to see a lot of other countries, which was really nice. And then I ended up in Australia, where I was working, and I met a Norwegian guy.
Yeah.
And that's really, like, after spending a year together in Australia, we decided to move back to Europe, and it ended up being in Norway that we decided to be, and we found Geilo, which is where we are now, and that was really because of the skiing and an easier opportunity to get into work initially is through the ski resorts and being able to teach skiing. So
Right.
it kind of was like, how can we make this as easy as possible, like to move to a country that I wasn't from and didn't speak the language in. So that was really how we ended up in Geilo. And we had just driven through Geilo in the summer, and by coincidence there was like a concert going on in the center of the town, and there was a cafe, and we were just kind of like, there seemed to be like stuff going on, and we'd been to other mountain towns, and there was like nothing going on. So it was kind of like this idea was like, okay, well, this place seems like people actually live here and have a life here outside of the seasons. So that was really why we were like, okay, well, let's just try here. And it was very easy to get a job, so that's also something that was like another good sign. So yeah, we just haven't left since. It's been like nearly 10 years now. This winter will be 10 years.
Yeah, because your partner is not from Geilo. He's Norwegian, but he's not from Geilo at all, right?
No, he's from Hadeland.
Yeah.
So I don't think he'd even been in Geilo, maybe driven through. So
yeah.
And also not really into snow sports, other than like obviously going cross country skiing a lot with family and things, but not like in the alpine sense.
Right. Yeah.
So it was really more because of my background that we probably ended up in the mountains.
Yeah. But I know you a bit, Rachel, and
yeah, we're good friends.
Yeah, we've known each other for quite a few years, actually.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned winter sports and outdoors activities, and the Rachel that I know, I kind of sense that might be part of your passion, but I also kind of have a feeling that there are other areas, other activities that I think also are a big part of what you really are passionate about doing. You want to tell a bit about kind of, yeah, a bit what you also mentioned, that you made a choice, or you're into doing not what maybe is considered the most normal or the most like, this town Yalo is quite, the focus is winter sports, but you want to tell a bit about that, Rachel?
Yeah, I guess like all the jobs I have always been very like based on communication and you know, working in teams, or being in like hospitality, and the winter sports and everything. All of that is like being in relationship with people, whether they're guests or they're other the people you're working with. So I think that's always been the thing that I actually really enjoyed, was like working with people in different ways. And it just turned out that the easiest ways to do that is often like in hospitality, or activities that are based around tourists or group things. So I'd say like in the back of my head, I always knew like it was more about people and community or communication and making connections. And so, and also for myself, like going through transitions of like living in different countries, meeting new people and making new friends and then leaving them behind. It's like a very unsettled kind of lifestyle after a while. And I think I started to feel that mentally after a while. And I was so young, it's like you don't really know what's going on, but you're like, oh, it doesn't feel as fun or exciting anymore. So this idea of like always moving around and doing new things and making new friends, and there was just like something that was starting to feel like maybe it's not working or having the same effect as it used to.
You wanted to settle in one.
Yeah, I think
one
like
place, focus on one.
Yeah, like
area.
I always am like one of these people that I have to have a feeling for something to do it. So I wouldn't just go and do it for no reason. I'd have to have a reason, and like I guess coming into a relationship with someone where you want to see where it goes, then that was kind of like this moment of big change for me to like grab onto it and be like, okay, I want to go for this and see what happens. And that's like this idea of where it was like, let's get a place together, let's try and get jobs together and like start a life together. And I think that's like that's not an uncommon decision to make. No. But it's like that was also like a big turning point for me to be like, okay, well, what do I want to do? Because when you work in hospitality, you're always working for other people, they're making the rules, and you kind of see it from that perspective of working for someone, like all the blind spots. And I think I was kind of like developing my idea of like what is important when working with people, and that kind of was always in the background of my head. But I guess the yoga is what kind of put me on a very specific path.
Yeah, because that's actually, I'm a bit surprised by your answer and the way you approach your answer, because I was expecting that you would immediately talk about yoga, because Rachel is doing her own yoga studio and doing weekly regular yoga sessions, and I have the impression that it's going quite like steadily, that it's that it has grown since you started, and that it's kind of catching on. So I was a bit surprised to hear you say that your sort of passion, or what you were into, was, of course, yoga involves working with other people and communication. But I didn't really, it kind of makes sense to me too, that might actually be like the grounding thing that, but for those who don't know this, and who maybe, if you're watching and you have never heard about Rachel, and say you're into doing yoga, then I would say that, Rachel, you're a bit like, I consider you a bit like this enduring pioneer in a certain sense.
I like that.
With doing because the truth is that me and Rachel and my wife, we some years ago we had a project together of renting a studio space, and we did the studio, and you were back then too, some years ago, you were doing yoga. And whereas me and my wife, we, because of circumstances in life and just personal choices and so on, we felt that it's time for us to step out of that, you know, with good feelings, and leave the space open for someone else to come in. But you remained, right? You remained in that activity, kind of. And yeah, before we started the recording, I was explaining to Rachel that I sometimes I see you a bit like a person who has a type of dedication or a focus on something, and I can see that in the yoga, but maybe you see it in other areas, or like...
I think you're right. Like, it just happened to be that, like, I can get very like, this is what I'm gonna do, I can also easily like change if I think that it's not working. But I think at that moment in time, I was like, I still haven't given enough I haven't given it enough of a chance to succeed or grow, because I think I knew that it would take me time. I was like prepared mentally already that it wasn't going to be some easy thing to fill up loads of classes quickly, and so I think it was just like, I just need to give it more of a chance for myself. And but if I hadn't felt like that, or I thought there was a better opportunity somewhere else, I would have just let it go as well. Like, it really depends on the situation, but I just wasn't ready yet to be like, I'd given it enough of a chance for what I was working towards. Because I think like being in a small place and bringing something relatively new, like there isn't a set yoga studio here where we live. There is sometimes classes going on, but like something dedicated to more of like this idea of well-being type of yoga, like where the concept is thought out from the beginning to the end, not just like come and do a fitness class and things like that. That was kind of, I knew that was something that was going to be hard because it wasn't necessarily already in place, or in the way that we had, or I had thought of it anyway, because it's kind of well-being and like health and spirituality is like evolving all the time. I feel, especially in the last like 5 years, probably a lot, because of all the things that have happened.
That's about when we
we
came
really
together to create this
and of course
studio
it was
idea.
a really hard time, so it wasn't
COVID.
easy.
That's true.
So it is really the circumstances, but I think I'm also like quite I don't know if slow is the right word, but I'm very like, I don't like rushing decisions. I'll make a decision and stick with it, but it like I don't see the urgency in things most of the time. I like to, and that kind of speaks to like what I teach a lot as well with the rest and like taking that urgency out of things, because a lot of the time that's what gives us anxiety and stress. It's like making things feel so much more relevant, like necessary, like now, like rushing everything. And I've definitely seen the benefit in not rushing things. And being aware if I'm deliberately procrastinating versus just being very calm in my way of thinking. Because of course I can also get stuck the other way. So, but it's like, I think it's been really helpful to be, you know what, I don't need to rush this.
No.
It's better to do it well and let it unfold and just keep working at it. But do it in like a calm, and maybe not calm, but like just a pace that feels I can live at this pace and not feel like I'm just going, and then I have to stop and be like, oh my God, like I need to take a break. And then it's like, go again. It's like, I'd rather just be like steadily plodding along, if that makes sense. That's like my goal in life. It's just to just steadily plod along. And of course there's occasions where I have to like maybe put more focus on something, and you know, it's a little bit more, but still then I'm like, because I've come from this quite steady pace, for me to speed up a little bit is not the end of the world, because it's like going to be for a small period of time, and then I'll just like settle back into that steady pace, and then I don't hopefully end up feeling overwhelmed or kind of lose interest in things because it's too much for me. So that's kind of like the mentality I have around.
It's interesting for me to hear your own words saying that, because me and Rachel, we've talked about what also I've shared in other videos about human design, and we've talked about Rachel's human design. And when I earlier I said if it was right, my impression of you being quite dedicated and like forwards going to a certain goal type of person. In a way, it's a bit a leading question because I know from what we've done earlier with human design that that's one of the qualities, like one of the powers in Rachel's human design and your human design. But also exactly what you were explaining about the steadiness and for people who might know a little bit about human design already, Rachel has what's called an emotional authority. And that shortly it means that a person who has that type of authority, they definitely should not rush their decisions. They should, like, they are much better off waiting, like feeling through the range of feelings that you might have about something and kind of making a choice from like a clear emotional space. But to hear you say it and your like your own reflection about your process is actually quite interesting. And I don't I don't see myself that way. Like for me it's interesting because I think it's not for everyone to have that connection or that, how should I say, that patience or that like
patience,
patience and also like
trust in the slowness,
trust in the slowness. And for me, I tend to think of myself as I can be very dedicated to something I feel for a period of time, and then I can feel like it just kind of wears off and I need to go somewhere else with my energy. But maybe I'm not sure if I'm right, but maybe you have like a deeper sense of what you're really working towards.
That's a good,
Maybe.
I do relate to that because I am very often like, it doesn't really matter what something looks like. It's like, do I still have the intense, like, like, does it still feel like it's on the right path?
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's more, it is more about like, do I get this sense or like, and some people don't like words like sense or feelings, but I do really like have a connection with like how I feel about something or the things I'm sensing about it, and it's still mixed in with like knowledge and what's actually going on. It's like a combination of like the information I'm getting and also like how that's connecting with me or how I feel about it. And it doesn't mean it's always right, but it's like the more you use it, that's basically intuition. It's like mixing the information you're getting and
the feedback, like the response from.
And I find that is how I really do navigate myself. And like just as you get older, it gets easier, or like you get better at trusting it or challenging it and trying it. And but yeah, it's definitely probably not for everyone, like you said, because I see like how it causes not resistance necessarily, but obviously like not everyone is like that. So to be around someone like me that can maybe seem a little bit passive or like calmly like taking my own path, it might look like it's not very like it's not really going anywhere because maybe I look like I'm not really doing anything or there's not much going on. I don't know if that's true. Like that's just what I'm thinking. Maybe some people feel like that can make people feel uncomfortable, but I don't know. It's like I don't like, for me it's the opposite. If I was trying to rush things or I would make bad choices. And then I would regret it and it would make me feel like, why did I do that? You know, I'd question myself a lot if I was just like quickly making.
Have you been like that your whole life, or do you feel like it's been a learning process from your childhood? Or has there been, for example, in your past that you can think of a certain experience you had that opened your eyes to this patience or this kind of taking your time? And
I think the patience has come like since I moved to Norway and like came back to my yoga practice and or like
Yeah.
because that was where I was struggling. Like I'd made this big decision based off of feelings, right, and what I wanted, but it was really challenging me mentally and emotionally. So I was like, I'm now getting like two different.
The
They were like,
decision was the partnership, the
yeah,
relationship,
like yeah,
or to
it wasn't with the it was more like the idea of like I want to try and actually be in one place and see, you know, like actually like we say settle down, but it was like it was a bit like that idea of like not planning to go off somewhere else, and keep moving around.
Right.
I think that was like where I realized I didn't have much patience before because I'd already always moved around.
Right.
And I think that was like a big learning curve.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
And that's why the yoga.
How old were you then?
25.
25, yeah.
And like 24, 25, yeah.
I wanted to ask you also, what do you remember what age you were at when yoga and I mean, I would also like you mentioned rest and nidra, right? Because I know that you're very into the importance of nidra. And do you know, what age were you at when you first came in contact with this?
I was probably 16 when I did a yoga class.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was either with my friends, because they had done it always with my mom, I can't remember, but I ended up going with my mom every week.
Yeah.
And it was very traditional yoga. And I wasn't like interested in the sense of like learning about yoga. It was just I like going to the class, and I liked the teacher. She was very funny and down to earth. Like not really what I would have thought. Well, I didn't really know what a yoga teacher would be like, but she would just surprise me because she was quite sarcastic and had a good sense of humor. And very like straight to the point as well, like, and I really like that about people when they're very like straight talking.
Right.
So I think I just enjoyed that, and I used to just go to the classes and learn a little bit about yoga, but wasn't really like thinking about it in any other way other than just being in the class for that hour, and then I'd go back to my life. Like I wasn't thinking of it outside of the class. And then after, I think I did it there on and off until I was like 21. So. Okay. But not consistently. I think there was like maybe 1 year where I was going like consistently, but I was always traveling. And but then if I came back to England, I would go to a class. Right. Yeah. But then I didn't do any until I was 25 again.
What were the benefits that you felt that you received from doing the yoga at that time?
I think, it was like physical mostly, but it was also challenging me like mentally, because it was like hard, and it was like, why is this hard? You know, like, why am I not as good as this person? You know, like more negatively, but challenging what I was thinking about myself, but then also seeing progress and like things like flexibility but I didn't. There was some chanting sometimes, but it wasn't really like learning about yoga. It was more like just, you know, being in a class and just doing what the teacher does and thinking it was like interesting. And
what about nidra?
That came much later on. Yeah. After I was already a yoga teacher. Okay. Yeah, so I'd already done a teacher training in 2016. Okay. Yeah. And I think like so much, that's where we did learn a lot about yoga philosophy, and also there was a lot of, I would say, like psychosomatic work that we did. I was away for a whole month in Costa Rica, so there was a lot. It was very like constant education, like all day, every day. And it wasn't just on like the physical practice of yoga. It was learning about what yoga philosophy is, and then also the ideas behind it and other people's work that is related to it. So it was actually very, I didn't know it was going to be like this, but it was very psychosomatic orientated. So like inner child work. Yes, I remember you even shared some information with us. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it's just like these things I'd never really even thought about, but we did all these things, activities in groups, and because you're in such a like tight knit community where you're not really in the outside world, it's like a very intense and can be very effective way to like do these activities that are quite powerful.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I just had like a massive like experience there, then come back to Norway, and it was almost like I was a totally different person, because it kind of showed me or opened me up to a whole different perspective of myself.
Yeah. Okay.
That was quite just a lot to take in. I think it took me, that's why Yoga Nidra came up, because I felt like I was struggling with like all this new information I kind of gathered about myself after that teacher training. It was like a lot to take in, a lot of like things to kind of be like, wow, okay, like, you know, realizations about growing up, and you know, the things you've done, and just many different things come up. And I think I found yoga
on
a lot of reflecting,
life, okay,
and some of it just being really difficult to like swallow, if
right.
you know, but like digest it, and just being like, that's a lot actually.
Yeah. Well, I guess that is a normal thing for all people. We all have our baggage, and maybe we come to a place in our life where we kind of, I don't know if it's like, instead of pretending like it's not there, whatever it may be.
Yeah, well, if not even knowing it's there.
Not even knowing that it's there, but that maybe it's like the you realize that the door to do something meaningful actually lies in going a bit deeper into yourself, perhaps. And
it's like, I was really like, wow, there's way more to me than I realized, or it's shaping my future, if that makes sense, because it was, but that's why it can be difficult, because you get like this overload of information, and it's like, how do I
find your center, sort of?
And how do I use this in a positive way? And I think that was like when Yoga Nidra just came in, and it really like switched things around for me, because it gave me that tool to be able to digest all that information and actually find clarity in it, and like peace in my body physically, because all these emotions, they have reactions on your mental state as well, like how your emotions show up. So it was like exactly what I needed in the moment to help me digest and do something with all that information. And I think that's what I think it's just one of the most like right things I've ever done, is I've been doing it, and I was like, oh my god, this is literally changing my ability to be a human. Like I could almost like feel my brain changing, and I know it sounds really odd, but it was like I had so many moments where I was like, I actually feel like physical changes happening in my brain, and like it was just very
like an empowerment.
Just like sometimes I explained it with like, because a lot of what's happening in our brain is like electric magnetic, and it's almost like actually being able to feel the light, like the sparks of energy between the neurons and things like that, because it's all about basically rewiring the way you're thinking. And I just was like really like, I actually feel that almost happening, like being able to feel the way I was using my brain to shift from one way of thinking to another, or like a new part of my brain opening up, and the information already being there, because like our brain stores so much information that we don't really tap into. And it was like through the Yoga Nidra practices, it was like showing me how much was already in my capacity. And I was like, oh my god, like I already know so much, or I knew this, and it was just
needed to learn how to access it, sort of.
And I think the practice is so about bringing you into your center.
And for you, you felt that for you the Nidra especially was a helpful tool.
I think just it's because you're, you know, the idea is that you're like deeply relaxed and like really limiting any type of stimuli from the outside world. The focus is really like very much internally, so all your ability to sense or feel or everything is supposed to be turned inwards. And so it's basically like if you were gonna study, or it's like studying your body intensely without having the input of the outside world or outside stimuli.
Almost like, it makes me think about like very grounding, like almost letting the roots grow inside of you, like into yourself, and
Yeah.
you feel like that was I mean, for me it sounds like it's part of this process of you also choosing to settle down and kind of, I mean, I can recognize that a bit too in my life,
Yeah.
because I also had a period of a lot of traveling, and then there came a phase when just I had turned 22 and I felt like something new happened, and I felt more the need
Yeah.
to settle down, and yeah. But Rachel, I have a question which I would like to ask you about. For me, when I perceive you, and one of the things that I find a bit admirable of what you do is how you've managed to maintain your focus on one thing and made it work for you in one sense. Like I know, or I imagine that for many people who have, they go through their transformative journey in some way or the other, and we might become really passionate about something, whether it be yoga or yeah, cacao or meditation, and then we feel like, oh, okay, we want to perhaps share this or make a living from this. And I think that you have done that to some degree. Like you've made it sort of, yeah, settle in, and I know that you have a regular praxis with this. And yeah, is there any, maybe it's very hard to give any advice about that? Do you feel like that's something anyone can achieve, or is it like, yeah, a special thing?
No,
does it
it's
go
not just
hand in
me.
hand? Yeah.
I think it's a good question. I probably have been like asking others, or like actually not asking, but more like observing people that do find some type of success in what they're doing.
Okay.
But I was thinking, like, there is like some pillars or like some things that stick out to me as like seem important, and I think that anyone can cultivate these in themselves because they're not like specific to what I do. But I think there is this like idea of belief. Like you have to believe in what it is that you're doing, and maybe there's some sort of like deeper understanding behind that belief that you might need, like from personal transformation. I also like really, I like belief because it can be a bit like, it's not something that's set, it's just you believe in it, so it's like really something that's coming from you. But I'm also like quite realistic, so I try and like match the belief with the what's actually going on, like what's happening. And
have you never experienced that it becomes like the realistic results, that they kind of kill the passion or the idealism that you